Howdy folks, and welcome back. Last episode, we went over the jargon issue when it comes to writing an ability. Being able to write a coherent and understood ability is tantamount to having a functioning card, mechanic, and ultimately game. Today, we're going to hit the next step in our journey. What makes for a viable ability? Meaning, what makes an ability good, bad, neutral, overpowered, etc. See, as game creators, we want our players to enjoy the game and make it as fair as possible without requiring a huge amount of quote-unquote aftermarket rules. Meaning, the card says draw 5 cards from your deck, but we deemed it too OP, so you can only have one of these in your deck total. Discrepancies in rulings are always going to happen, we just want to try to limit the amount of potential issues players are going to run into. So with that, let's start off with what makes for a usable and viable ability. I guess the first question is, what's the purpose of an ability? Simple question, simple answer. It's to add another layer of strategy to the game so it's not just a bonk fest of higher numbers. These abilities can do anything from draw potential, status effect, board movements, etc., etc. A good ability can synergize with other cards to create a stronger effect, or can be useful on its own. It's hard to make a quote-unquote bad ability, but you can make an unfair ability. Granted, there are bad abilities, and I'll show you one. An unfair ability usually comes in the form of either a total lockdown of your opponent's ability to play, or the cost of the ability is too cheap, thus giving you more incentive to constantly play it. Now, at this point, I usually look at multiple glaringly poor examples of what I spoke about. The thing is, of course, it's always more complicated because, as I was doing research, a majority of bad abilities came down to the player requiring to memorize and remember a lot of different things happening at any given time. This seemed to be the biggest issue in Magic, and having picked at MetaZoo twice, it's time instead I look at Pokemon. And then Gates. Afterwards, it's time to actually start putting many of these different aspects into Aquology, where I will create the basics to 3 cards and explain my reasoning. So with that, let's look at what I believe to be a prime example of not only a not good ability, but I would just call it a straight up bad one. This is the Dialga from the Call of Legends set. Its attack for 4 metal energy does only 70 damage, and then you have to shuffle your hand into your deck. Keeping in mind, it doesn't say you then get to draw more, you just lose your hand. I shouldn't need to explain why not having a hand in most card games is a negative thing, but for those of you in the back sniffing the expo markers, A, hi, welcome to class, and B, no hand equals no real ability to play. Are there situations in which not having a hand is good? Sure, in very, very, very select cases. We also have to pay attention to everything else about the attack. Now, had this been for a single metal energy, okay, that's a fair trade-off. 1 energy for 70 damage and you lose your hand could be a great early smack in the beginning of the game. Or you could change it, in which you shuffle your hand and draw 5 cards. The energy cost is still expensive, but at least you get some benefit from needing so many metal energy. I'll go over the worst card in the game, in my opinion, Riley, when we go over utility cards. Now let's look at some of my personal goofs, specifically the Devil's Assistant. And please don't pay attention to the use of the word till. It should say until. I must have been thinking quicker than I was writing. Anyway, the ability says that when cosplayed, disable one of your opponent's creature's effect until that creature is removed from play. This is A, kinda overpowered, and B, really, really stupid. For context, each player gains 4 points at the start of their turn, not including any other potential effects in play. So, this allows the Devil's Assistant to be played as soon as possible and permanently nullifies a creature's ability while in play. If the ability were to exist, it should be until the Devil's Assistant is removed from the field, not the other way around. If the cost of the card was increased to, say, 8, maybe that could help balance the ability if I didn't want to change the effect of it, as it would require several more resources for a much more powerful ability. But with all things ability-wise, it's for the most part contextually based off the games and its rules, so let's get into Aquology. As I said, I'm going to be making 3 different abilities. Before we do that though, some game ground rules. The objective of the game is to obtain 15 victory points. This number may change with playtesting, of course. Each fish will have a victory point value of 1, 2, or 3. Those with a 1 point value will be weaker but easier to create, with 2 and 3 requiring more resources but being stronger. Players will also have the quote-unquote active fish, the one fighting, and 4 fish that can be barracked in reserve. Think Pokemon TCG with its active and bench, same concept. Players will also have access to 2 slots for persistence cards. These are cards that, when played, stay in play until they're removed one way or the other. I don't want to really get into the weeds yet, as these things are still in flux, but this background knowledge of the game will be useful in this and later videos. With that baseline out of the way, let's start with our first fish. With a point value of 1, we have the red-eyed bluegill. With 1 VP, it's going to be on the weaker side, but I do want this fish to have some solid support features. So, while its stats will probably be something like 3 health and 2 attack, obviously subject to change, its ability is what I care about. As I said, I want this bad boy to be a solid support fish, so here goes. While red-eyed bluegill is barracked, add +1 attack to your active fish for every fish in your discard pile. Now, this is a solid support creature that can be used to really power up the attacking fish, but with such low health, it can also easily be taken out of the game, removing that powerful benefit. In testing, if we find that it's still too powerful, the text can change so that it's +1 attack for every 1 VP fish in your discard, or something along those lines. As always, everything is subject to change, and I find your feedback incredibly helpful. Moving on to our 2 VP fish, as seen in one of the other videos, the Nessie Gator. Now, the Nessie Gator is going to have sort of 2 roles. The first is with a higher VP, it'll be a good mid-tier attacker, but its ability will help the player keep their board full. While the stats are currently unknown, because I haven't balanced it yet, the ability is as such. When Nessie Gator is in the active slot and attacks, you may take 2 egg cards from your discard pile and place them into your hand. As always, this will be reworked once someone ultimately breaks it in testing, and that being the case, egg cards are used to actually spawn the fish. You play an egg card on the board, attach mutagens to it, and that's how you will then mutate into the fish that you want. Also, just because I think it's cute, here's the current sketch of the egg. I know, adorable. Let's move on to our final fish, a 3 VP fish. It will, of course, have higher stats than the prior 2, and this bad boy, I want to be an attack-based fish. If you're part of the Discord, you would have actually already seen the base sketch. Now, here's the final product. Dual Saw Shark. Alright, I don't know about the name, it's still in the works. Anyways, I feel like making this an all or nothing sort of fish. So, its ability will be as such. When attacking, flip a coin. If heads, you deal double damage. If tails, the attack does nothing. I also envision 1 or 2 cards that let you re-roll or re-flip if you don't get the outcome you want. But again, all of this is in the works, and without any testing, who knows what may happen. Now, it's important that games have cards like this that can just hit like a truck. It adds some level of suspense, but gives you something to work towards. So, in this case, the Dual Saw Shark will absolutely cost 6 mutagens to create it, and if it's a strong attacker, it'll probably have a little bit of a lower health pool that can, and probably should, be supplemented with other cards. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little shorter than some of the others. Next time, we'll be looking at utility ability cards to round off our trifecta of ability videos for now. If you'd like, please feel free to join the Discord so you can get any updates as I work, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on a thing. And it also helps me gauge interest for what different types of video topics I should be focusing on. In any case, thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Peace!